Democratic Alliance Mayoral Candidate for Johannesburg, Dr. Mpho Phalatse, is leading a march against the billing system in the city. The march comes as political parties embark on campaign trails and missions to gain votes ahead of the local government elections. Our senior politics reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo, caught up with Phalatse and filed this report.
As political parties continue on their campaign trail ahead of the local government elections this morning, the Democratic Alliance have taken their fight to the city of Johannesburg, where they've now handed over a memorandum to Finance MMC Mfikwe over the billing issues within the metro. And I'm now joined by the DA's mayoral candidate. I'm talking about Mpho Phalatse. Thank you so much for your time, Mpho. You've handed over this memorandum, but I guess one of the other questions that one could ask you is that when the DA was actually in charge of the city of Johannesburg, you had actually promised to eradicate, the billing system. You didn't do that. Some could say that you're acting self-righteously right now.
Well, it's true that we inherited the billing crisis in 2016, but it's also true that we had 100,000 billing queries when we took over the government, and that in the 3 years that we were in government, we reduced it to 9,000. So we dealt with it at a rate of 90 queries resolved per day. This shows that with the right leadership, with political will, you can tackle the billing query. Right after we left the city, right after the government or the DA-led administration collapsed, we saw a rise again in the number of billing queries and disputes. And what that means is that we're not collecting the revenue that we need to be collecting. And if you look at the state of the city now and look at what revenue is needed to fix the city, and you look at the lack of leadership and political will to sort out the billing issue, it is unacceptable. It is an injustice to the residents of the city.
Now, you're running to become mayor of the city. You've been within the chambers for some time now. What are some of the lessons you think that the DA has learned that you'd want to implement almost immediately if you are to take over office?
Well, the DA has always known what needs to happen, and that's why I'm saying in the 3 years that we were in office, we were able to almost eradicate the billing issue. The problem is we couldn't eradicate it because we were only in office for 3 years. So that's lesson number one, is that ideally we need to get an outright majority so that we can give our residents 5 full years of the DA difference. Had we still been in the city now, we would have eradicated the billing problem if you look at the rate at which we were dealing with these disputes. What we need to do going forward is, firstly, we need to take over this government, so we need people to vote us in on the 1st of November. We need them to give us an outright majority so we can be in government uninterrupted and give them the 5 years. Then we need to fix the billing issue. You know that there was a step upgrade that had already been agreed to before we came into power in 2016. You know that there was later corruption that was uncovered by the Zondo Commission, and you know that EOH has since walked out, and that step upgrade is not happening. We don't even know where that is sitting right now. The billing issue is still unresolved. People are experiencing daily outages because of this mess. Because what then happens is, because we're not collecting the money, we're not rendering services, and even those who are paying are being disadvantaged and unfairly punished by a system that's not working. We will make sure that our ratepayer gets value for money. They cannot be paying for services and not receiving those services. We'll make sure that people who are not paying for services but can afford to do so are held to account. And
can I jump in there, Dr. Phalatse, if you would allow me? Because how do you then deal from both a political perspective and managing the finances of the city with, for an example, residents of Soweto?
So we know the problem of Soweto, and Soweto's problem is also complex. There are people in Soweto who pay their bills, and they have shown us, and I've been on the campaign trail. And what's happened is, particularly in Eskom supply areas, when Eskom disconnects, they disconnect everybody, regardless of whether you're paying or not. But this we've established. Residents of Soweto are willing to pay for services. I've spoken to people on the streets. I've spoken to even people who are unemployed who've said to me, we're willing to make a plan. We are willing to pay for services.